Well, welcome everybody. Today it's going to be Mr. Jorden Nash. You may know him from the Xlights Around the World fame. He usually puts all the videos together between him and Russell and a couple of other guys. Today he's going to be teaching you about an intro into Adobe After Effects and motion graphics. So have at it.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. I am Jordan. I'm based in Salt Lake. I started using After Effects, back in high school, which was longer ago than I care to remember. Um, and it is a visual effects and compositing software. I mean, it can do so much more than that. But in general, it's the motion side of Photoshop. So it and Adobe Photoshop go hand in hand. They work together very, very well. And as the years go on, they continue to work even better together. And you can do compositing, you can do motion graphics, you can do visual effects, you can do all kinds of really cool and interesting things. So, um, I started learning this back in high school, like the end of high school. I'm like, oh, you can like move text around and do keyframes and move stuff around and do cool things. So I want to learn more about this. And just throughout college and into the start of my career, I started to dive more into it and went from there. So kind of self-taught. So this is not a collegiate course by any means. And if there's one thing I teach you, it's that there's 100 ways to skin a cat. There's so many different things that you can do, and so many different ways to do them. I'll show you just one, but there's probably 30 other ways to do them. A point to make before I go too much farther is that this can be, if you want it to be, a very complex software. And there is no way in the next, 50 minutes that we have together that I can even scratch the surface. Well, I will scratch the surface, but that's it. You can really dive in very, very deeply. What I love about this software is that if you don't know how to do something, there's 100 tutorials online because it is a very popular software. 100 tutorials online. Just go to YouTube, uh, type in what you're trying to accomplish, and you'll have 100 tutorials pop up about different ways that different people accomplish the exact same thing. Another thing to note is the way that I learn software is not by, oh, I want to learn something today. Cool. So let's open a tutorial and do it. Rather, I have a project that I'm doing and I need to figure out how to do something, so then watch the tutorial and then try and accomplish what you're trying to make, if that makes sense. So that's the way that I would recommend doing it is if you have a end project, then figure out different ways to accomplish that end project. After Effects is not free. There is a free trial, but it is a paid software. I have the entire Adobe Creative Cloud suite, which is expensive, yes, but I love it and it is absolutely worth it because I use it every day. It comes with Photoshop, which is the image editing software, Illustrator, which is more vector-based, and those two work very well together. Premiere, which is their video editing side of things, Audition, which is their audio side of things, After Effects, and then there's a whole slew of web and VR and 3D modeling and UI and all that other stuff, and I don't use a lot of that stuff. Publishing, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to focus on After Effects. It does play nicely with other Adobe software. Before I dive in too much, I don't have a PowerPoint. I'm rather going to use After Effects as my PowerPoint, so bear with me. And I, of course, will go quite fast. There will be things that you're going to be like, oh, hold on, I didn't quite get that, or back up a little bit, or there's going to be some of you that are like, I've done this before, let's move a little bit quicker. So hopefully I can do okay in kind of splitting the difference between those two of not going too fast and then not giving too much information that we can't fit it in the hour. Because again, you could go to an entire college course on this software and still not learn everything. Every one of these topics that I'll talk about could be an entire hour long in a college course. So before I go in too much, let me open up a recent project and just kind of show you some of the power of After Effects. Let's save this. This is a project that I did this last year, and this is actually a projection mapping project. Let me share my screen. This is After Effects. So I just opened up this project, and let me just kind of point out a few little things. I won't go into too much detail, and just to show you some of the capabilities, and then we'll go back into my project that I made for this class and kind of break down each of these steps step at a time. So this is a projection mapping composition that I made, and it models after Small World at Disneyland. And every night, they used to anyways, during like the COVID era, they projected, "We don't talk about Bruno." And I saw that and I'm like, hey, I have a Small World light display, Xlights display on my house. So let's project on top of the lights and kind of replicate what they made on Small World. So I'll poke around in here for just a minute or two and kind of show you some of the things. So inside of here, I have this is what I use to align my projectors. So I have a blinking dot in the middle, as you can see right here. And I also have these lines that are moving, and that's so I can check the sync because I do have two projectors that blend together, and that's a whole different topic about how we get those to blend. But this kind of template I can use to align my projectors when I set them out on my front yard to align them onto the house and project on it. So that's what this whole composition is for. Let's come into my main buildup here. So this is my main buildup, and inside of here, I have all of these different layers inside of my timeline, and I'll go into more of the layout here in just a second. And as I scrub through, you can kind of see different elements coming in at a time. And as I'm scrubbing through, it is rendering on the back end. And rendering is a thing that we'll talk about a little bit later. The more complicated of compositions and layers and effects that I have, the more time it will take to render. Just like an Xlight sequence, very much hand in hand. So if I go to this and I turn on this right here, this is an actual recording of Bruno in person, right? So I took that and then tried to remake it on my house. So if I turn that layer off, here's my attempt to remake all the umbrellas and the rain and the bubbles. Some of these are video layers, some of them are images. We have lots of masking, lots of matting, lots of effects and color correction and all kinds of stuff going on. There's a little bit of rotoscoping in here to cut out the characters out of the movie. There's one specific spot that I want to show you in here, and I think it's this section right here, with all the blocks moving. So the original looks like this, and it has all these blocks that kind of move. So I took this and remade all the blocks inside of Photoshop, and then took the blocks and then reanimated them inside of After Effects. So let's just take a quick look at this. Here's all my blocks that I made, and these are all different layers. And I'm going to full screen my composition view, my timeline view rather. And let's just take a quick peek at some of the keyframes here. And I'll go into what keyframes are in a second here, but you can just see how complex just a simple animation like that gets to. This is maybe, 3-4 hours of work to do all these keyframes and animation and things. So, okay, there's that. And that's about how much I want to dive into this, just kind of showing you this is what's possible inside the software. So let's now break down all of these things and start from the basics. I don't want to save this. As I go throughout this, I do have all my keys that will come in the bottom. I have a really bad habit of, I know a lot of these keystrokes, but I don't vocalize them. So as I type, you'll see my keystrokes show up at the bottom. And then I also have a little zoom window so you can kind of see where my mouse is. So I'll zoom in and out on things. So let's start out with the panel layout. Up here, we have the project panel. This has folders inside of it. These folders do not reflect folders inside of your Finder or Explorer window. And this is where I can drag in assets. I can drag in images, Photoshop files, solids, videos, of course, and then all of my compositions. Timelines inside of After Effects are called compositions. So here's all the different compositions that I have. If you take one thing away from this presentation, it's stay organized. After you drag in an image, make a folder that says images, drag that image into the images, or else this just gets really hairy really, really fast. So I have an images folder, a videos folder, and a composition folder. And as you, again, make the different things and import stuff, drag it into a folder. Importing is as simple as I can grab a image, which I don't have ready here. Let me grab an image here. I'm looking at my other screen right now, which you guys can't see. And, oh, we got some Grinch. So I can just click it and drag it over this window, and boom, it's imported. I can double click it to see it here. And then I immediately want to set that and file it into the images folder. Okay, down here is my timeline panel, composition panel. What do you call this? I think it's called the timeline. And this is where we do all of our animation and keyframing and keep track of all of our layers. Here is our canvas, and that's where we can actually see everything. And then we have a whole bunch of miscellaneous panels here on the right. Text panels, character, paragraph, effects panels, property panel, all the little things that do things that we need to do to manipulate certain layers and things like that. Okay, so that's the rough layout. I can take any of these panels. Let's say I want to take this panel and move it around. I can then dock it above or to the right or to the left. So let's take this panel and dock it to the right or to the top, and it will now split that panel into two. And I can also grab this panel, grab the little panel there, and then dock it right back here, and it puts it full screen again. So I can easily move panels around. I can also click and drag panels to make them bigger. Super handy. Let's come back to here. Additional options in the bottom left of panel. So notice that each panel has all these little kind of icons. So like for my my canvas panel, I can zoom in and out. I can hit fit to screen. I can turn on alpha mode. I can turn on masking mode. I can turn on different colors if I only want to see red channels or alpha channels or all of it. I can also adjust exposure for the preview. And I can take like a temporary screenshot. Again, I'm going through this fairly fast. Same thing with here. I can turn on different switches, they call them, different options in my timeline panel. And then here I can add a folder or rename folders or add compositions or whatnot. So there's all that. And that's our layout. Let's move on. Keystrokes. Keystrokes are huge. Again, if there's a thing that I can teach you, it's learn your keystrokes because it will save you so much time trying to fish around in the menus to try and find the right thing that you want to. I love keystrokes and it saves you so much time. So let's show you the ones that I have listed here, plus and minus with the composition, with the timeline, excuse me, panel in focus. That's the blue bar all the way around it. I can just hit plus and minus on my keyboard and notice how it's zooming in and out. My hand is almost always on the plus and minus because I zoom in, move a keyframe, zoom back out, zoom back in, zoom back out, zoom back in, zoom back out. So I'm always in and out. Control N, I'm going to hit Control or Command. Got a PC. This makes a new composition. I can name the composition, set frame size, set frame rate, and then set duration and a background color. So that's how I make a new composition or timeline. We'll talk a little bit more about pre-composing here in a second, but After Effects has this feature where you can make timelines within timelines, compositions within compositions. So if there's an effect that I'm using a lot of, I can pre-compose it into a timeline and then use that timeline over and over in different other sub-timelines. Gets a little bit confusing. It's a really powerful feature. So if I grab these two layers here, I can hit Command-Shift-N. No, cancel. Let me do it on my Mac keyboard. Command-Shift-C, sorry, there we go. There we go. And then I get a pre-compose and it's wanting to ask me the new name of the composition. I'm going to do this keystrokes, which is the name of this composition. And I'm going to call it a pre-comp. And notice that this now kind of merges into a folder or a subcomp, if you will. And then if I double click this, there's the two layers that I just pre-composed. So let me close that, come back to here. Command K is my composition settings. And this is the same window that you get when you open up a new composition, which is super handy. And space is just play pause. So it's playing right now. There's not any animation or any audio, so you can't really tell nothing's moving, but play pause does that. Okay, let's talk about importing layers. I think that we just talked about that. I imported one. You can either double click in here, and that will bring you up a import window where I can import an image and sort that image into the images folder. I can click and drag from a Finder window into here, which we just demonstrated. And again, I want to sort that. And again, keep things organized. That will help you so much. So that's how to import content. Let's talk about layers. organizing layers in the timeline. So out of here in my project panel, I can grab any image that I want to, click and drag it down onto my timeline, and it now adds another layer onto my timeline. Now we can't see that because it's underneath all of these layers. Let's move this up to the top, and boom, there's my logo. So it does read top to bottom. Top layers you see in front of you, bottom layers you see at the bottom. Top layer is nearest to you. Eyeball. Okay, let's talk about our eyeball here. On the left side here, we have these eyeballs. These eyeballs turn on and off the layer. So I have a background layer here. Notice when I turn that off, I get the checkerboard right here. Checkerboard means transparent, means that there's nothing there. And I can turn on the background. So that is a gray layer. And then I can turn on my two text layers. So that's what the eyeball does. I can also tag these layers with colors. Notice that there's little colors here, and I have this little tag mark. I can right click on this and select blue. So let's put these two layers as blue. And I can right click on this and go to select label group, and then it will select all the layers that are blue. So just a handy way as you're bringing things down, you have text layers. You can label all the text layers as a color. A handy way to keep things organized and to quickly select layers with similar characteristics, similar properties. Just a handy thing to have. Okay, let's talk about solids. The most basic attribute shape that you can use is a solid. So I'm going to come up to layer, go to new, and select solid. And I get a window over here. And let's select a color. I'm going to select right here. Sure, we'll make it a medium gray blue solid. It will automatically name the color for me, or I can sit here and rename it. I can make it any size that I want to. Let's make it 200 by 200 pixels, or inches, or millimeters, and hit OK. I now have a solid that automatically sorted into my solid folder. So I could delete it off of here and drag it down again. And that is my solid. Let's make one that's full screen. Let's say I don't want a background that's gray from an image. Rather, I want a full screen solid. So let's click here and go to File, New, Solid, and make this full screen and black. I'm going to click Make Comp Size. It'll automatically adjust the solid to the composition size, which is 1920 by 1080 full HD. I hit OK. And now I have a nice background that is black. And that's how you make a solid. Handy if you just need a color. Let's talk about basic transform. Inside of here, notice that I have this little twirl down. I have a little twirl down here on each of these layers. Inside of the twirl down, we see a whole bunch of things. And as I apply more effects and more things, this will become increasingly more complicated. I have a contents twirl down, which has all the properties of my box shape layer. And I have a transform, which has some basic properties. All layers have these properties, except for like audio layers, because they don't have visual, right? I can adjust my anchor point, which we'll talk about in a second, position, scale, rotation, opacity. So let's start with position. I can grab this, and as I click and drag to the left and right, notice that box is moving left and right. Let's Control Z and let's come up and down. And now I'm going in the Y dimension. There we go. Scale is exactly what you would think it would be. I can uncheck this little link here and scale X. So there's my X scale and my Y scale, and I could even do this and relink it, and now it will scale proportionately at that ratio. Rotation rotates it side to side, and then my opacity is how visible it is. Visible or opaque it is. So there's that. I'm going to click on this little button right here that says reset, and boom, we're back to square zero. Okay, let's talk about anchor point. Anchor point is the point at which it scales and rotates around. So if I rotate right now, notice how it's rotating around this point right here, right? I'm going to rotate around that point. Now let's say I want to rotate around the center. Well, let's Control Z that. I'm going to click Y on my keyboard right here, Y change anchor point. That then moves me to this tool up here instead of my arrow key, which is my normal. I'm going to click Y right there, my anchor point move tool. and I'm going to grab the anchor point and move it to the center. Now, if you want to get it in exactly the center, there is a little shortcut, and it's up here in layer and transform. Where is it? Transform, center, anchor point in layer content. And now it's exactly in the middle, and there is a keystroke for that, which I use often. Now, if I rotate it, notice that it's rotating around that center point. Same thing, if I scale it, it's scaling around that center point. So that is all that. Okay, let's talk about these keystrokes that I have right here. If I collapse this and I just push P on my keyboard, notice what happens. Just the position shows up. And if I push S, just the scale shows up. So this is another way that you can use your keyboard to quickly find these properties. So I don't have to find this little itty bitty twirl down, twirl it down, then twirl down again for my transform, then twirl down again for my scale. I can just hit S just because it's a very commonly used property. Same thing with R, T for transparency, although it's opacity, and then A for anchor point. Now, if I hold Shift, I can do A, T, P, and it brings up all those. Okay, that's all that I want to talk about that. Let's talk about keyframing. Keyframing is kind of the essence of After Effects. A keyframe is a property, a value of a property at a given point in time, right? So I could have an object over here at a certain point in time, and then later on, let's say a few seconds later, I move it over here and I set another keyframe. After Effects will automatically move in between the two keyframes. Most properties in After Effects, including effects, can be keyframed. So let's turn on my box and let's turn off those other layers. So I just have my box here, and let's push P for position. And notice next to position, I have this little stopwatch. When I click on this stopwatch over here on the right, it automatically adds me this little diamond, which is a keyframe. Okay, I'm going to move it over here to the left. Now it saves these values for this property at that time. Let's move over here to like 2 seconds, move it to the right. There we go. And you can see the dots. Every dot is a frame of video, and it shows you where it is along that path. Now, as I scrub in between the two, we have a simple animation. Okay, let's go a little bit farther. Let's go to the right, and then back here at 4 seconds, I'm going to highlight this keyframe, copy and paste. Now we're back to the left. So we have a little animation that goes to the right, abruptly stops, and moves back to the left. Great. Let's talk about interpolation. So this is more of an advanced thing. It's how the keyframe is treated, how the data is treated coming into and out of the keyframe. Let's say I want it to come to the second keyframe here at 2 seconds and ease into it. I want it to slow down, stop, and then speed back up again. So if I right click on this keyframe, I can come to Keyframe Assistant and click Easy Ease, or F9 is your shortcut. Ooh, F9, okay? Notice that I have this keyframe now. Now as I play, it will slow down. Oh, here, let's watch it in real time. Now it slows down. Oh, that's Easy Ease out. Okay. Here, let me just hit the keyframe. There we go. Okay. Now, see how it slows down? Now it comes back. Speed up, slow down, and then it comes back. Very handy. What else did I want to talk about this? Easing and interpolation. Okay, we very briefly talked about that. A more advanced feature, and let me just show you this. Next to the keyframe, I have a graph. And with this property selected, I can click my graph and then click on my graph switch here, and it shows me exactly over time what it's doing, which is kind of cool. And I can come in here and edit my graph and move it around and even adjust how much it eases and all that kind of fun stuff. So anyways, just showing you where that is. What else is here? Fade in and out. Okay, so let's make this do one bounce, and when it comes over here, let's do a simple fade out. So I'm going to hit T on my keyboard, make a stopwatch, and then advance. Advance 30 frames a second and turn my opacity to 0. Now we will do a bounce and then fade to 0. And that's how you do a fade. Okay, one more handy key on your keyboard is the U key. Pressing U will reveal all properties that have a keyframe set to them. So move over here, fade out, and we're good to go. Okay, motion blur. As this is moving, it looks very crisp. The more motion blur makes it blurry, but only blurry the faster the objects are moving. So I'm going to come down here in my switches and turn on this little guy right there. And that gives me a few more options in the layer. And the one that I want is this guy. And I'm going to turn that on, motion blur. So I turn that layer to enable motion blur. And then I have to make sure that this little guy is on, and that universally for the whole timeline enables motion blur. Now notice as I move it, it gets a little bit blurry. See that soft edge right there? And the faster that I move it, the blurrier it'll get. So see that now it's moving a little bit faster because I moved that keyframe in, and now it's even blurrier. So kind of a nice way to make things not so crisp and a little bit more fluid. Okay, let's talk about pre-comps. We chatted about this just briefly, how you can put compositions inside compositions. Let's say I want this. Let me copy this box layer and paste it into my pre-comp layer, and it moves over. Let me take out the fade out, so it just moves to the right and back to the left. Let me duplicate that, and I'm going to move all of these keyframes down a little bit. And let's make this layer blue. In my fill, come here and make this layer blue. Great, and I'm going to offset it just slightly. And that's just so we have one box and then the other box, bounce and then bounce. Okay, I'm going to pre-compose now these two layers, Command Shift, Control Shift, and C rather, and let's call this boxes pre-comp. Great. Now I have this boxes pre-comp composition. If I double click that, there's my two layers. I'm going to come back to the original, and there is that. Let's now take this pre-comp, scale it down, and duplicate it, Command D, and let's move that layer down a little bit. Okay, now I have in 2 layers and not 4 layers, I have this pre-comp shown twice. I hope this makes sense. I can even offset this a little bit. And you can use your imagination how this would be incredibly handy when you have very repetitive things that you use a lot. So you can make one composition, do your effects, and then use it several different places, and not even necessarily inside the same pre-comp, the same composition. I can grab this, copy this, and let's put it back in our transform comp, and there it is there, right? And then if I come here and adjust my boxes, let's make this now a different color. Let's make it into a, let's go into a green, a dark green. There we go. And then if I come back into here, notice that I have red and green now. And in here, I have red and green. Super handy. Super, super handy. I use this technique all the time for Xlights Around the World. Comps inside of comps inside of comps inside of comps. And you saw that a little bit in the demo that I did at the beginning. Okay, let's talk about parenting. I hope you guys are having fun. This is a lot to talk about. And again, I'm probably flying through some things. Give me 2 seconds. Oh, there we go. Okay, parents and children. This is a fun way that one layer can inherit or be linked to another layer. So if this layer is moving around, this layer can attach to it and move around also. So to demonstrate this, I have a Earth and a sun. Great. Did I do any? Nope, I didn't do anything yet. Okay, so I'm going to move my sun around. Let's do a position first of all, and I'm going to do a keyframe here. Move forward a little bit, do a keyframe here, and just the sun moves. Now let's say I want the Earth to move as well. I'm going to grab this little pick whip right here. Let me make sure I'm on the right layer. There it is. My pick whip here, click it and drag it down to that layer. Now it is parented to layer 3. And as I move layer 3, layer 2, called the Earth, follows it. How cool is that? Great. Now that we have that, let's do something where I do it rotating because I want the sun to rotate. So let's do that, and let's do a rotation of 1 full rotation. And notice how the Earth is rotating around it. Kind of cool. And it's rotating again around that center anchor point. And then let's grab the moon. There's my moon. And I want to parent the moon now to the Earth. And let's also put a keyframe on the Earth for a rotation. And let's do the rotation to -1. Now the moon will orbit around the Earth. Here, let's make the moon orbit a little bit faster. Let's do -3. Now the moon orbits around the Earth because the moon is parented to the Earth, and the Earth rotates around the sun because the Earth is rotated to the sun. How cool is that? That's pretty darn cool. Super handy when you have a lot of different layers that need to work in tandem. I don't know why I have a camel here. I guess the camel's just for background. There we go. You're getting burned, Mr. Camel. Great, let's move on. Mats. Matting is a technique where we use the alpha, the transparency information from one layer, and apply it to the color information of another layer. So only parts are transparent. So let's look at this layer right here. That is not a black and white image, but an image that has transparency in it, but it's red, which is kind of ugly. I want to use this alpha transparency information from this layer and apply it to the color information of this layer, right? So it will basically cut out the camel for me. So over here, not to be confused with the parenting pick whip, over here, the track mat pick whip, I'm going to grab the camel and pick whip it to the alpha mat. And it's as simple as that. It takes the alpha information. Notice that I have that little icon now saying that this is now a matte layer and this is a color layer, and applies it to this camel. Now, here's something funny that happens if I take this alpha matte and move it aside. See what it's doing? Okay, so that is how you can use an alpha matte. Let's use a luma matte. So I have a luma matte right here. Luma is a black and white. This does not have an alpha layer. It's rather black and white, where white is opaque and black is transparent. And it's just a cool little transition that starts in black and ends in white. So I'm going to use the same camel right here and zoom in and pick whip it to this layer. But it says luma matte right now. So to change it, I need to change it to a luma matte, and that's this little button right here. And notice now I have the transparent background as I scrub forward. It starts and transitions in. Again, using the luma information from one layer and applying it to the color information of another layer. Just kind of a handy technique you can use when compositing things together. Also very handy for transitions. Okay, let's talk about masking. Masking is cutting out, well, parts of a layer. Look at that, it says it for me. Multiple masks can be used on the same layer. So I have a camel here, and let's scale that down. It's a little bit too big, so I can either do that hitting S and manually scaling it down, or let's undo that, go to layer, layer, yes, and come to transform and hit this, fit to composition width, and that will exactly scale it to the width of comp. Okay, now I can zoom in here, and let's now grab my pen tool. Whoa. My pen tool, which is right here. I'm going to grab my pen tool, and let's just zoom in and start making a mask. I'm just clicking. If I click and hold, I then get handles, so I can do a little bit of a curve. I'm going to come back and do his neck later to demonstrate how multiple masks can be used. And I'm going through this very quickly, just for the sake of demonstration. Let's click outside, zoom out, and come around it. And notice that that cuts out everything that I don't want. Okay, let's now make another mask. Now, in order to see the camel, I'm going to turn this mask off. So highlighting that layer, I'm going to click M on my keyboard, which brings up my masks, and set the layer mode to none, which basically ignores the mask. And let's now make another one around the camel's head. And again, set that to none. And let's do these two little bits right here. And I can come here and refine these all that I want to. Now let's set all three to add. And now our camel is cut out. One more thing to show you is, excuse me, is feathering in here. So inside of my mask, I can twirl down and I have mask feather here. And if I turn this up a little bit and then come up here, see how that edge is a little bit feathered now? So that's kind of a handy technique to have. I'm going to turn that back to 0. And that's how you mask things. And then I can take another background and put other things inside there. Masks can also be animated and keyframed. So I can add a keyframe here and then move my mask, let's say, I want to select the entire mask, but not those 2 points, and have it animate. Ooh, there we go. Have it animate from there. See, now it can transition between those 2 things. So kind of fun. Okay, let's talk about text. Oh, we're doing good on time. Hope you guys are having fun. We can grab our text tool up here and click it, and then I can select, no, I want to select a new one. There we go. I click and drag a box. I spell good. Okay, there's my text. And over here in my text window, I can adjust the size of it. Notice that's getting bigger and smaller. I can adjust my font. I can adjust a stroke if I wanted to add a little bit of stroke in. You can kind of see what that's doing there. Here, let's make this a bit bigger. And then I have some other options, kerning and tracking and scaling and all the good stuff. So that's text. Let's look at inside of here and notice that I now have a text option here, which I can also drill down on. And then I have some other options here that I can animate and make it follow a path and adjust fill and anchor points and do some fun text effects. I can also come over here into my animate and animate per character position or scale or colors or tracking or anything like that. And you can do really easy, like 2 keyframe, and then it will animate them per character. So you can have like one character spin in, and then the next one spin in, then the next one spin in, and just with very, very few keyframes, very minimal work, you can do those kind of effects, which I will not demonstrate now because we got to keep going. Let's go to the next panel, which is effects. Effects are kind of at the core of After Effects. What good is After Effects without the effect? So, I have a few things here. This one I want to demonstrate an effect of just some basic color correction. So over here in my effects panel, and again, if you don't see these panels, you can go to Window and find them, open them up here. So under my effects panel, let's make this a little bit bigger. If I hit tilde hovering over any window, it brings it full screen, which is kind of nice. So I can bring that full screen, bring that full screen. So, okay. Oh, it's so little. And I can't make it bigger. Okay. Inside of here, there we go. Inside of here, I want to do some basic color correction. So let's do just a hue, a saturation. So I'm going to apply an effect called hue and saturation, click and drag the effect and drop it on the layer. And notice that 2 things happen. One, I now have a new twirl down that says effects, and there's my hue and saturation. And these are all the options that I have, and I can keyframe some of them. And also I can adjust those exact same options up here in the effects panel. So let's move my saturation up a little bit, and now it's super saturated. And let's rotate my hue a little bit and make it all kinds of discolored, like that. Like the eyeball here, I can also turn the effect on and off easily. There's one more effect, color correction effect that I want to show you, and that is Lumetri that Adobe purchased a while ago. So let's grab that, and I'm going to drop it over here in the effects panel this time, which also works. And let's scroll down under my basic correction, and I can adjust temperature. I can also, if there's something white in your image, I can click this little eyedropper and select the white thing, and it will automatically color correct to that, which I don't want to do. I can adjust saturation, exposure, make it brighter or darker, or do some more advanced things like color wheels, curves, all kinds of fun things. Okay, that's color correction. In a nutshell. I don't know what I was going to do with that one. But let me show you one more effect that is commonly used, and that is green screen. So this is a video layer of just a plane flying over. I'm going to apply a effect called key light. Key light, there it is. This time I'm going to drag it on the layer. Grab my little eyedropper right here and click it. And click here. And as simple as that, it has now cut out all the green. Now that's a very, very clean green. Sometimes it's not that good, so you have a lot of other options to select ranges and all things like that. And now we have just a plane flying over, and let's put our camel underneath that. And now we have a plane flying over a camel. Oh, okay. Here's a good demonstration of how to use a mask. Let's duplicate this camel layer, bring it above the plane there, and turn on my mask. So let's now put this towards add. Okay. Do you see what's happening now? So this is a layer on top that is just this bottom part. And then we have the plane that now flies behind it. And then I have the layer without the mask behind that. And now we have the plane just flying in the sky. So just kind of a way that you can do things on top of things. I have a green screen and a mask going on the same timeline, which is kind of cool. Let's move right along. We got 10 minutes. Rotoscoping. Nope, generative fill. Okay. Oh, I didn't update this text. Sorry. Generative fill. Okay, this is kind of a new feature. It came out 2-3 years ago. So I have a pre-composed composition already. I'm going to double click on that, and this is called Bus Roto. And what I want to do is remove this ugly pole that's coming in front of it. So in order to do that, I'm going to make a mask and tell After Effects what I don't like in the image. So let's put the mask here, and I'm going to keyframe this. Oh, that's not what I want. That made a shape layer, not a mask. Let's now make a mask here, and let's see how fast I can do this. I'm going to hit the keyframe, and let's hit none for now, and fast forward a little bit. And I'm just very quickly compositing this. Okay, let's come back here and do one more right there. And it's gone right there. Okay. So I'm first tracking around the parts that I want to get rid of. Let's do a few more frames here. Right as it goes out of frame, I'll do one more here. Okay, so now if I hit this to subtract, notice that that pole is now blank. There's nothing there. So in the generative, I'm going to do one more thing just to save a little bit of time. I'm going to divide these layers into two, a split, which is Command-Shift-D, and another split here. And this is so it's not rendering the entire 33 seconds. I just want it to render this little bit. And then I'm going to pre-compose this bit. Bus roto generative fill. Great. And then I can click on this. Well, it didn't copy my keyframes over. So let's undo that. Here we go. This time I want to hit move all attributes, which will move all my keyframes over into the new comp. Let's double click on this, and there it is. So now it's just that short little part of this. Let's bring up the window that's generative fill. Generative fill, okay. I'm missing something. Timeline generative fill. Oh no, that's not what I want. I forgot how to do it. How do I do this? It's not an effect. Is it a window? No. There it is. Content aware fill. It is a window. Okay. So it sees my alpha layer there, and now it knows what it needs to fill. And I'm going to do a little bit more. Let's do a 5 there. And what it's going to do is use AI, which is not really AI, it's just a fancy algorithm. I'm going to click generate fill layer. And right now it's trying to figure out what pixels would be there if they existed in the first time. Notice that I have a progress bar here. So it'll analyze it. And we'll wait for it. And after it's done analyzing, it will try to reinvent what pixels should be there. And it does a pretty good job. It's not an amazing job, but it's pretty dang good. And you'll see it here. I did this in preparation for this. When it gets to items that are moving fairly fast, it kind of breaks just a little bit. Okay, now it's rendering what it thinks should be the pixels. And notice right here, I already have in that frame that's already rendered, I already have that part filled in. So there's before, there's after. And as I scrub forward, oh, it's still generating all the frames. As I scrub forward, look at that. The pull is like, it's gone. It's just gone. And you can kind of see where it was before. But yeah, pretty slick. Okay, so I'm going to let that finish in the background and we'll move back to our demonstration here. Let me come back to generative fill. And yeah, that layer is now pre-composed inside this layer. So as I come back, I'll be there. So there's my generative fill with the light pole removed as it continues to render in the background. Okay, let's now do some rotoscoping. Rotoscoping is not what you think. It is a motion tracked mask. So instead of masking this, which I showed you earlier, frame by frame, After Effects does have quite a bit of automation built into it. So let's come to the beginning here and click on my roto tool, which is up here, roto brush. And then I'm going to double click on this pre-comp and let's fill in the layers that we want to keep. So let's just kind of select around them. And notice as I select around them, yeah, not that much. A purple or blue or something, I don't know, I'm colorblind, line appears around it. And let's do the trailer too. That's probably a big battery pack or something. I'm guessing this is a modern bus. I'm going to very crudely just click on areas that I want to keep. And alt click on areas that I want to remove. And I can sit here and really fine tune this if I want to. Now, as I play forward, see how it's now tracking what it thinks should be the bus, right? This is super handy. I use this in the Bruno demonstration that I did at the beginning to cut out the characters as they're moving. And it does a pretty good job. And again, I can sit here and stop this anytime that I want to and refine this and add little parts or subtract little parts or whatnot. I'm going to let this go for just another second here. Notice this car will come into frame, but it won't catch it. It'll stay tracked onto the bus. Okay, let's stop there. And to speed up time, I'm going to hit this button called freeze right here. And that kind of renders in what the outlines are. And notice that this is all in color and this is the background. And let's stop it here soon. Okay, now if I come back to this layer, that beginning there, which I processed it, now has the bus cut out, which is kind of cool. And that's about as deep that I want to go into rotoscoping. Let's see here. We got 2 more minutes. Let's chat about tracking. So inside of this, I'm going to open up a panel called Tracker, and I want it to be a 4-point tracker. So let's do I can do oh gosh. There might not be enough time to explain this. I can do a 3D tracking, which tracks the camera movements, and then you can put in 3D layers inside of this and have them like affixed to the ground. I can put labels in the ground and they will move with the camera. So it tries to like solve where the camera was and then makes you a 3D camera. After Effects can do just a little bit of 3D, and then you can put objects back into that 3D space and it will reverse track back to the shot. That's the best way I can explain it, which is pretty cool. Let's talk about exporting in our final minute or two here. After you composite all of these things, I want to render them back together into a final video. So let's grab something that we had some motion that we did in. This one right here. So let's say I want to export this as a video. Move my sun up a little bit. There we go. I'm gonna click O. I'm gonna click right. Geez, shift right. Oh gosh. N. There we go. That's the number I want. N here to set my my work area. So that's just the area that I want to render. And then I'm going to go to composition and oh goodness, I don't know where this is in the menu. I know the keystroke. Add to render queue. That will then add that portion into my render queue here, which is a new window. I can then set what render settings that I want. I want to set it as a H.264 with pre-multiplied color. And then let's set it to a location. And I want to set it in here. And this is going, yeah, let's call it parenting because we demoed parenting. Hit save and hit render. And this should just take a few seconds. The more complicated these compositions get, the longer it takes to render. Xlights Around the World takes 3 to 4 hours to render that 5-minute video. And then let's find where I rendered it and watch it, and then we will be done. There it is. And there's the final rendered video in an MPEG-4 that I can upload to YouTube or Facebook or share with my friends or whatever. That was kind of a whirlwind, wasn't it? It's just getting started with stuff.
Yeah, that's a lot of information to take in.